and welcome to algebra. All right, today we're going to learn how to multiply radicals. Okay, so when multiplying radicals, what you want to do is you want to multiply the coefficients. Remember, that's the number is in front of the radicals, right? And we want to multiply the coefficients together, and then we want to multiply the number that's under the radical together. And then we want to simplify. All right, so let's do one example here together. I see I have 4 square root of 5 times 2 square root of 3. All right, so first step, I'm going to multiply my coefficients. So my coefficients here are 4 and 2. So 4 times 2 gives me 8, right? All right, so that's part of my answer. 8 is part of my answer. So now I have to multiply the numbers under the radical. So under the radical, I have 5 and I have 3. And whatever I get is what's going to be my new radicand, what's going to be under the radical. So what's 5 times 3? Well, 5 times 3 is 15. So that 15 goes underneath my radical. All right, so now I want to see if I can simplify it. So remember, simplifying it in class, we usually did a factor tree, right? So I'm going to take that 15, I'm going to say what times what gives me 15? Well, I know 3 times 5 gives me 15. Well, 3 and 5 are both prime numbers, so I can't factor it anymore. So this is all the way simplified. So my final answer here would be 8 square root of 15. All right, let's try another one. All right, so my first step is I want to multiply my coefficients. So my coefficient here is -3, my coefficient here is -5. A negative times a negative is a positive. 3 times 5 is 15. So 15 is going to go on the outside of my radical. And now I want to multiply the numbers under the radical, right? So under the radical I have 8 and I have 2. So what is 8 times 2? Whatever that is going to go underneath my radical. 8 times 2 is 16, right? Okay, so now I can do 16. Well, square root of 16, that's a perfect square. The square root of 16, that equals 4, right? Because 4 times 4 gives me 16, so that's a perfect square. So now I have 15 times the square root of 16, so now I'm going to have 15 times 4. And what is 15 times 4? What does that give? 15 times 4 is 60. So my final answer would be 60. That's because we had a perfect square. All right, let's try another one. These ones are cube roots. Cube roots we can do the exact same way, right? So I'm first going to multiply my coefficients. So I have -2 and I have 7. Those are my coefficients. Negative times a positive is a negative. 2 times 7 is 14. All right, now I'm going to do the same thing, but with my cube roots. So my cube root, I'm going to write my cube root symbol. It's like a square root symbol with a 3 inside the little check mark, right? So what do I have underneath my cube roots? I have 4 and I have -3. 4 times, positive times a negative is a negative, right? 4 times 3 is 12. All right, so now I want to see if I can simplify this any further, right? So -12, what can I pull out of -12? Well, I know -2 and 6 would give me 12, right? 6 would give me 2 times 3, right? All these are prime numbers, so I can't simplify it anymore. And since it's a cube root, I'm trying to look for 3 of the same number I can pull out, right? So I can't pull out anything that's there because I don't have 3 of the same number. Well, since I can't pull anything out of here, everything's still the same, right? I don't have a group of 3 I can pull out from underneath the radical. Then my answer is just going to stay that -14 cube root -12. That's my final answer. I can't simplify it anymore. That's my answer. All right, let's do one more together. Let's do this bottom right one. All right, this bottom right one. All right, so I'm going to multiply my coefficients, 5 and 9. 5 times 9 gives me 45. All right, now I have my cube root. So I'm going to write my cube root sign, which is like a radical sign with a 3 inside of it, right? And then I have 4 and I have 4. 4 times 4 is 16. 16. So now I want to try and simplify that, right? See if I can reduce that radical down. So let's see, 16. What times what gives me 16? Well, we just did 4 times 4, right? So we can do 4 and 4. And then each 4 can be broken down into 2 times 2. And this 4 can be broken down into 2 times 2. All right, and since it's a cube root, I'm looking for a group of 3 I can pull out from underneath my radical. Right? So I have a group of 3 2's here. So I'm going to pull out a group of 3 2's. So what does that mean? So now I still have that 45 out in front, right? but now I'm going to multiply it by my group of 2 that I pulled out. And then still inside my cube root, I still have 1, 2 that didn't have a match of the 2 other ones, right? So that's staying locked inside underneath my radical. All right, so from here, I can simplify this more, right? I can do 45 times 2. 45 times 2 is 90. So that would leave me with 90 cube root 2. And that is my final answer. I can't do anything else. All right, so when you're multiplying radicals, all you do is you multiply the coefficients, the numbers in front of the radicals, then you multiply the numbers under the radical, or the radicands, right? The number under the radicals, and then you see if you can simplify them just by making a factor tree like we did in class. Okay, there's some practice ones down here. Of these practice ones, let's do one more together. Let's do this one here together. All right, so I have -4, and this one just says negative, so negative square root of 3. So remember, when there's a negative, it's really a 1. So I'm going to do -4 times -1. Well, a negative times a negative is a positive. 4 times 1 is 4. So that's going to leave me with 4. All right, then I want to go underneath my radical, right? So underneath my radical, I'm going to draw my radical sign. I got 15 and I got 3. 15 times 3 is 45. 45. Oh, where'd my 5 go? Why did it disappear? 45. Okay. So now I simplify it, right? I simplify it. I got to write my factor tree. 45. What times what gives me 45? Well, I know 5 times 9 gives me 45. And then 9 I can break down into 3 times 3, right? Well, since this is a square root, I just need a group of 2 to pull out. And I have a group of 2 3s I can pull out from underneath my radical. So I still have this 4 in front. And now I'm pulling out a group of 3. And then underneath my radical, I still have this 5 that doesn't have a match, right? So that 5 stays underneath. So now to simplify this further, I can do 4 times 3. 4 times 3 would give me 12. So my answer would be 12 square root 5. All right? Okay, go ahead, pause the video. Try these ones on your own. Unpause it when you're done and check your work. Pause the video and try these 3 on your own. Unpause when you are done to check your work. Go ahead, try it. See how you do. Okay, hopefully you paused your work, paused your video and did your work, and hopefully you got these answers here. So my first one, that top right one, I did 1 times -4 gave me -4. 375 times 5 gave me 1,875. So 1,875, I did my factor tree. And since this was a cube root, I saw I had a group of 3 5s I could pull out. So I pulled out that 5, and I still had a 5 and a 3 stuck inside. So then we just multiplied those. -4 times 5 gave me -20. 5 times 3 gave me 15. And that's my final answer. -20 times the cube root of 15. This bottom left one, I have 3 square root 12 times square root 6. Well, this would be 3 times 1, which would be 3. 12 times 6 gave me 72. 72 I'd have to break down. 72 I know is 8 times 9. 8 can be broken down into 4 times 2. 4 can be broken down into 2 times 2. And 9 can be broken down into 3 times 3. And since this is a square root, we look for pairs. So I say I have a pair of 2's and a pair of 3's. So I pulled out a pair of 2's and a pair of 3's. So I pulled out a 2 and a 3. Right? So then I still had to multiply it to that 3 there. And 3 times 2 times 3 gives me 18. And I still had 1, 2 stuck in there. So that stays trapped underneath our radical. Right? So then, on this bottom right one, this is both cube roots, and there's no coefficient. Well, there's a coefficient of 1 for each of these. So it'd be 1 times 1 is 1, so I don't really need to write that. But now the cube root, 4 times 32 gave me 128. Well, 128 I broke down here, did a factor tree. I know 128 is even, so I'm going to divide it by 2. So 2 times 64 gives me 128. 64 is 8 times 8. 8 can be broken into 2 times 4, and 4 can be broken into 2 times 2. And that's the same thing for this other 8, right? And since this was a cube root, you look for your groups of 3. So I see I have a group of 3 2's here and a group of 3 2's here. So I pulled out 2 2's, 1 for each group of 3, and I had 1 2 stuck inside here, right? So that stays trapped inside of our radical, right? So that gives me 2 times 2 gave me 4, so it'd be 4 times the cube root of 2. Okay? All right, this last one, this is a challenge. It says, what are the possible values of A and B? Okay, so what we have to do here is we have to try, this is like working backwards, right? So if I want to move this 5 back inside of here, if I want to move that 5 back inside of there and underneath that radical, that means that 6 is still in there. But if I'm moving that 5 back inside, that's an ugly looking 6. I'm going to rewrite that. All right, so if I want to move that 5 back underneath the radical, just like this radical here, we pulled out a group of 2's to get a 2 outside, right? So if I want to move it back inside, I have to put in a group of 5's, and I'm going to multiply it. So it's going to be multiplied by 5 times 5. All right, so then I would just multiply those 3. 6 times 5 times 5 gives me 150. 150. So it says, what are possible values for A and B? Well, A and B could be 2 numbers that multiply together to give you this number. They give you that 150. So like 15 and 10. Or 2 and 75, right? There's a whole bunch of numbers you could choose for it, but it's just saying what are possible values it could be. Okay? So if you're working backwards, you take the number on the outside and you have to put it in. If it's square root, you put it in twice, right? If it was a cube root, I would put it in 3 times and then multiply everything underneath. All right, so simplifying radicals, multiplying radicals. So when you multiply radicals, multiply the coefficients, the numbers in front first, and then you multiply the radicands or the numbers under the radical, and then you simplify if you can, right? And then you simplify it, and then that's your answer. All right, if you have any questions, please ask your teacher, and I'll catch you next video. See you later.